And welcome to episode 2 of Internet Movies, our first post 500 Cinematary series. Our first episode, which you probably heard last week, was called In Real Life, and we were looking at a bunch of movies from throughout the decades that mostly take place in the real world, not in cyberspace, but kind of show how real people's lives are affected by the internet. Today's episode is titled Windows 95, because all the movies we're talking about came out in 1995. Originally, we were going to have The Matrix in there because it does feel like an important internet movie. But when Michael let us know that there was a fourth internet movie that came out in 1995, we had to make sure that we stuck to the theme.
I didn't realize you had titled it that. I love it.
I made the executive decision. But our movies for this week are, and we're going to look at them in release order. We're going to imagine we're living in 1995 and watching these movies in real time.
I can't wait for that Bill Clinton.
Have you guys seen this new start button on the Windows OS?
It's revolutionary, man. We're going to start with Johnny Mnemonic by Robert Longo. Then we're going to go to The Net by Irwin Winkler, a movie I did not know existed until Michael alerted me to it. Then we're going to do Hackers by Ian Softly, and we're going to finish up with Strange Days by Catherine Bigelow, which is not exactly about the internet, but there are connections and parallels to be drawn. And it definitely has the same kind of cutting-edge futuristic vibe that the rest of these movies have. But just like last week, before we get into movies, I wanted to start with a quick little rundown of the history of the internet as I've been researching it throughout doing this series. And last time we went from like the 1600s, I think, to 1957. And so now I'm going to take you from 1957 to 1995. And apologies that this timeline is a bit longer than the timeline last time, because there were a lot of developments in internet technology.
We were all slacking for the first couple centuries of internet technology, I gotta say.
That's right. And before we get into it, I have a trivia question once again for my panelists here. My question for you: when Apple started selling computers, how much was the first Apple computer? What was the cost of the first Apple computer?
$2,000.
Okay. Any other guesses?
$2,001.
Okay. We're doing like an over-under.
Price is Right.
They have that 95.
You know what? To stick with the theme, I'm gonna say it was 1995.
That's a good guess. The correct answer is $666.66.
Ooh.
Ask the guy who edited the Wikipedia page for Hackers to adjust that for inflation for us.
Right.
Also, good job, Zach.
Yeah, by Price is Right ways, I win.
Yeah. By Price is Right rules, the award goes to Zach. Let's get into the history, starting with where we left off last time, 1957. That is when the USSR launched Sputnik, the first satellite orbiting the Earth. And so that's a major moment in the ramping up of the space race. So the United States starts ramping up their computer science developments at that time to try to keep pace with Russia and communicate more securely throughout the Cold War. A lot of the developments in internet technology were for government and military purposes, you'll see. 1 year later, in 1958, the United States government creates something called ARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, that later gets renamed to DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And then moving forward into 1962, we have the first documentation of the internet on like a theoretical level. There's this researcher at MIT named J.C.R. Licklider, who writes a series of memos about something that he called the Galactic Network, which at the time was this still theoretical interconnected set of computers through which everyone could quickly access data and programs from any site. And then this guy ended up getting named the first head of the computer research program at ARPA. 1965, we get some more MIT researchers, Lawrence G. Roberts and Leonard Kleinrock, who successfully used a dial-up telephone line to connect two computers for the first time. 1967, one of those researchers, Lawrence G. Roberts, also joins ARPA, and he publishes his plan for what he called the ARPANET. And then 2 years later, in 69, the first message was sent over the ARPANET. That message was simply login. 1971, we get the first usage of the term electronic superhighway, which was actually not used to refer to the internet, but the future of television and just kind of the technological connectivity between homes. It was an RCA engineer who first used that term, though it's often attributed to the Korean visual artist Namjoon Paik, who did a lot of internet-themed art. Also in 1971 is when floppy disks began being developed. The first ones were 8 inches long and wide. I thought that was interesting. And then in 72, we get the first presentation of the ARPANET to the public at this conference, the International Computer Communication Conference. And this introduced the public concept of email, though email was not yet commercially available. 73 is when we start to expand out from just one single network of like a couple of computers talking to each other into the idea of like multiple different networks all communicating with one another. This is at the time called internetworking. So this is where the term internet originally comes from. We don't actually see the term internet get used for another 10 years. In 1975, ARPANET gets handed over to the Department of Defense. And we're still like, everything going on with the internet at this point is still like just a military operation in 1975.
And kind of Matthew Broderick gets into it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I have on my timeline here when War Games came out, which, or maybe I deleted that. I forget. It was in the 80s though, right?
83, I think.
83.
Or 84, something like that.
This information has not gone public yet.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said it was the ARPANET was handed over to the Department of Defense. Do you know where it began? Like, I know that you said the U.S. government, but...
Yeah, I guess it just was under kind of a different branch of the U.S. government, more of like a research branch as opposed to a military branch, but I'm not totally sure. That's a good question. Feel free to Google around and see if you can find it. 1975 is also when Microsoft gets founded by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. They were initially just selling software that was designed to interpret programming language, because at this point, computers don't have like user interfaces in the same way that they do now. It's all like code. And 1 year later in 76, that's when Apple gets founded and starts selling their computers for $666.66. So the guy who priced it at that point, Steve Wozniak, he said that he didn't know about the significance of the number 666 in the Bible.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But Apple is 3 guys originally: Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. I thought it was interesting that Ronald Wayne actually left the company after only 12 days of being a part of it, and he sells his share back to Jobs and Wozniak for $800. I wonder if that guy like killed himself or something later on. In 1980, there's the establishment of what's called a Usenet, That's the earliest example of a message board or like an online bulletin board where users could share and discuss news articles. 1981 is when Microsoft releases MS-DOS, which is still a fully text-based operating system that at the time becomes widely adopted and kind of established the dominance of the company in the tech field. Same year, 1981, IBM releases what they called the personal computer, or the PC, which that's interesting to me that just has become the generic term for computers, the personal computers.
My dad said at one point any non-IBM PC was called like an IBM clone or something like that.
IBM clone. Wow.
I don't know how long that lasted, but
I mean, this computer was incredibly important. Like, computers today are still, like, the architecture of them is often still modeled after the IBM personal computer. Folks listening should Google the IBM personal computer just to see like the style of it and look at how familiar it is, because everything else before that was like these room-sized computer server bases. And this is the first time that like you have a computer that's sitting on somebody's desks and has like a little keyboard and a screen. So
I thought like Apple 1 and 2 were before this.
I have a thing on here about Apple putting out their first like consumer grade computer, the Macintosh, in 1984. I think.
All right, I'm not trying to fact check you, but the Macintosh came after the Apple 1 and 2, I believe. But
I'm gonna look up what the Apple II looks like.
It's like a modular thing where it was basically just a motherboard and you plug different things into it. So you could like put a monitor and keyboard on it if you wanted to.
I was gonna say, you also get a look at like what computers kind of looked like before they became personal in war games, where like you go into that room and you have like all the different servers going crazy.
Right. So yeah, maybe Apple did beat them to the punch on that. I'm not sure, but everything I found was talking about the IBM PC as like the original. So I'm not sure why that is. I also, as a big fan of electronic music, I felt like I had to mention that in 1981, that was also the release of the album Computer World by the great German band Kraftwerk, a seminal electronic record entirely about the advent of computing. 1 year later, 1982, we get the first laptop computer, which was a term that was coined by the company Epson. And their laptop computer looks kind of like a flat digital typewriter. Same year, we have the Commodore 64 gets released. This is primarily known now as a video game console, but it was kind of a computer that could play video games, which we'll talk about kind of the overlap between computer culture and video game culture, I think, when we get to hackers. But there's quite a bit of that. 1983, this is when the internet kind of gets split between the military having their own private internet servers and ARPANET kind of becoming open to commercial and public use. They established something called the Transfer Control Protocol / the Inter-Network Protocol. You often see this shortened as TCP/IP. And this is where the idea of a computer having an IP address comes from.
While we're back on the military, I found the answer to the ARPA question. So ARPA was under the Department of Defense and developed the ARPANET, but then it was passed on to another like subgroup within the Department of Defense in 1975 called the Defense Information Systems Agency, or DISA. Okay. I don't know what any of these things are.
So it was always the Department of Defense, really?
I guess so.
Okay.
And it was just passed on to different.
I mean, that makes sense because it's a Cold War space race thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Almost done here. Just a couple of more bullet points on my timeline. 1984 is when Apple releases the Macintosh. This is the first mass market personal computer that didn't require knowledge of any sort of programming language to use. So it has like an actual UI that's meant to feel kind of intuitive. And the first TV ad for this machine was actually directed by Ridley Scott and aired during the third quarter of the Super Bowl. that year.
Is that the 1984 like throwing the hammer at Big Brother at?
It is.
Oh man, cinematic Lanzers.
I mean, TV Guide agreed. They later called the ad one of the greatest TV advertisements of all time. And this kind of sends Microsoft into a bit of a tailspin. They're attempting to compete with Apple's operating system, so they released the first version of Microsoft Windows, which I think at the time was already called Windows 1.0, but it was really just a graphical shell for MS-DOS that allowed users to have multiple windows open at once.
Have y'all ever used this?
I have not.
It's so funny. You can literally minimize Windows, and it becomes its own little like taskbar at the bottom. So like then you'll have like DOS and like Windows. It's really wild because there's like a Windows behind the Windows that you access DOS in.
Huh. So it's like there's like a 3-dimensional element to it.
It's not 3-dimensional, but like imagine your desktop with all the shortcuts and everything is itself a window.
Yeah.
That you can resize and everything, and there's just this like blank screen behind it, and you like if you close the Windows window, it boots you back to DOS.
Huh.
It's really weird.
Yeah, definitely worth looking up, I suppose, for folks at home. 1985, we have Atari, which was actually founded by an ex-employee of that company, Commodore. They released their own first personal computer, the Atari ST, and they had only done just straight up video game consoles before this, but now they're trying to do the Commodore thing of having computers that can basically play video games. 1989, we have MCI Mail, the first commercially available email platform, and something called The World, capital T, capital W, The World, becomes the first commercially available internet service provider. And this marks the beginning of what we now refer to as Web 1.0. And on the grand timeline here, people tend to call Web 1.0 the time period between 1989 and 2004. In 1991, we see the invention of the World Wide Web by a guy named Tim Berners-Lee, who's working on the Swiss-French border. And he made the internet into something that was not just a way to send files and messages directly from one computer to another, but this interlinked web of available information, kind of accessible to whoever. And then going along with that, 1 year later, 1992, a group of students at the University of Illinois developed an internet browser called Mosaic that later got renamed to Netscape. Did you guys have Netscape growing up?
I was at people's houses who did. I remember
it. Sounds familiar.
I remember Netscape. It's possible I'm getting it confused with AOL, but yeah, I remember like the sites that you had access to kind of being displayed to you in the form of like rectangular banners that were visible like when you opened the home screen of Netscape.
Did Microsoft have like an antitrust thing involving Netscape? Like,
I don't know.
Somehow like they were manufacturing their computers so that Netscape couldn't be used, or it was harder to use than Internet Explorer or something like that. Like, I vaguely remember in like the big like Microsoft like antitrust, like Netscape was involved somehow.
Wow. So they made Netscape harder to use so that people would use Internet Explorer instead?
I believe so. It's something of that nature.
Funny how that worked out for Microsoft.
I know. Well, neither of them have survived.
True. But Netscape was a big deal because it was the first time that users could see both images and text on the same page. And it was the first time that you could navigate a website using scroll bars and clickable links. So this is when the internet starts to look like what we know it to be today.
Can you click on something new every time you want to see a picture?
Oh my God, yeah.
Also, shout out to AOL. This year, they're finally shutting down dial-up internet. There's still 100,000 people who use dial-up AOL internet in the United States. Yeah,
man, I want to hear from one of those people.
Yeah,
send us an internet.
Well, we're right now trying to find if there's a person in Charlotte who still uses AOL dial-up internet.
Oh gosh, I would love to interview them. But now we have made it to the end of my timeline. We're at 1995. This is when the U.S. Federal Networking Council officially defines the term internet as a global information system. And the definition is much longer than that, but I cut it down to just the beginning because it just gets into tech jargon after that. But this is also, of course, when Microsoft releases Windows 95, a huge commercial success that became the default computer operating system around the world. I used Windows 95 quite a lot.
The school system.
Absolutely. Yeah. Essential. Any timeline thoughts before getting into the movies, people?
I know it. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Zach.
No, you're good.
I was just gonna say it's interesting to see like the pace of development and like how comparatively spaced out things get, and then they just get increasingly clustered together. Like Internet 1.0 lasting 15 years, and then like Internet 2.0 lasts like 10 or fewer years, right? Before we're in like the 3.0 era.
What year do we consider 3.0 as starting?
I don't know, but it's like social media, right? Isn't that the crossover, which is like late 2000s?
Yeah, my high school years, I suppose. I'm sure we'll get to it. I'm sure it'll come up in future timelines.
Good morning. This is your wake-up call.
Okay, let's do this. Hook me up.
On May 26th, meet the ultimate hard drive.
Hit me.
He's got 80 gigabytes of data in his brain.
The information you carry could save the world.
We locked on him.
And a price on his head. Keanu Reeves is Johnny Mnemonic, rated R. At theaters May 26th.
But let's go ahead and talk about Johnny Mnemonic. This came out in May 26th of 1995. Big summer movie. They were really pitching it as a color blockbuster. Yeah. The director, Robert Longo, was originally a visual artist, like a drawer and a painter and a sculptor, before he transitioned into making music videos for bands like New Order, REM, and Megadeth in the 1980s. This is his first feature film. Screenplay is by William Gibson, who's typically credited with inventing the cyberpunk genre. And Johnny Mnemonic was actually in his first collection of short stories, which predates his big novel, Neuromancer. The movie was originally going to be a low-budget art film, and they were really struggling to get financing for it. They only wanted like $1.5 million. But Sony eventually agreed to make the film, motivated by a desire to capitalize on the emerging popularity of the internet. This is something people are talking about. It's in the zeitgeist. We got to make a movie about it, right? And so they offered a much more money to make this. I think the initial budget was in the tens of millions of dollars. Originally, the lead was
where'd that go?
Where'd that go? It all went to the Dolphin. Val Kilmer was originally going to be the lead in this, but thankfully, in my opinion, he dropped out and was replaced with Keanu Reeves.
It still would have been good. I like it.
I don't know. I feel like this movie doesn't work without Keanu Reeves, personally.
This movie barely works with Keanu Reeves.
But between Keanu Reeves being cast and this movie coming out, Keanu Reeves' previous film Speed comes out and becomes an unexpected hit. So Sony then upped the budget even more and was intent on marketing Johnny Mnemonic as a blockbuster.
And it's a weird like Speed reunion in that case.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. And apparently William Gibson said that Sony executives approached him and began pressing him about whether or not the film had buses or explosions in it.
It should have.
It should have. I agree. This was a movie with a lot of creative differences between the studio and the filmmakers. And eventually this movie was recut without the involvement of Robert Longo, and he was very unhappy with the finished version. He said it did not reflect his artistic vision, but he did speak positively about the black and white cut that was released just in 2022, a couple years ago. A lot of the elements of William Gibson's original story were cut for the film, including my favorite plot point involving the dolphin, whose name is Jones, being addicted to heroin. So it's unfortunate we didn't get that arc. A lot of the casting decisions in the film were studio mandates. Dolph Lundgren, for example, as well as Takashi Kitano, who people may know as a Japanese comedian and filmmaker. And he was actually cast to appeal to the Japanese market. And this movie had an additional 8 minutes of Takashi Kitano in the Japanese release.
The Japanese people get all the extra media releases. Like their CDs always have more tracks. Like
that's true.
So
that's true. Dolph Lundgren's character was added for the movie. His character's not in the book or the story at all. He is the like preacher themed assassin, and one of his key scenes for the movie would have been a monologue about transhumanism that he would have delivered naked, and it was cut for fear of offending religious groups.
The rest of his character wouldn't have offended.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I got that. Whoa.
There was a video game tie-in for this movie, only released on computer, of course. And apparently when this came out, Sony set up an online Q&A with William Gibson to answer questions for the fans about the video game. And I thought this was really interesting. Apparently, this was the first time William Gibson had ever used the internet.
That is amazing. Yeah, dude's whole career is based on it.
I know. A couple of quick critic takes, and we'll hear from the more important critics in the room today. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars. He called it one of the great goofy gestures of recent cinema. In the New York Times, Karen James called the film a disaster in every way.
Yeah.
So, Grace, do you wanna say more about that?
No. That sums it up quite nicely. This was difficult to watch. It took me 3 separate tries to get it started. I hated every second of it. Somebody else. Does
anybody want to try to summarize Johnny Mnemonic for folks who have not seen it? I feel like it's a very difficult movie to describe, but
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
All right, so messages are like uploaded into these couriers who are called like mnemonics or whatever, and so they upload it into their brain and so then they like get the message, but they only see like blurs of it, and the blurs are like an access code, and the access code is how the person who's receiving the message can access the message in Keanu Reeves' head. But then he has to use this like machine that he hooks up that literally like it doesn't like physically make him, but like kind of like makes him vomit it out. Like it's like he's gonna vomit it out of his brain waves. And so he gets this message that we later learn reveals the cure to this like disease, this nerve system disease thing.
Yeah, NAS, nerve attenuation syndrome.
Yeah, but it's been leaked from this pharma company, and the pharma company's trying to recover it because they don't want it to get out. But then he teams up with amazing casting, Ice-T as the anarchist rebel leaders.
His gang is called Low Tech.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
So you're telling me we got an NAS cure on that floppy disk?
And I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but like NAS is something that's it's kind of caused by the proliferation of the internet. It's like raised brains are being constantly fried by radiation.
It's like
the internet.
It's like sitting there for an hour and watching TikTok nowadays.
Exactly. The original brain rot.
Brain
and they don't want the cure getting out because that's
they don't want the cure getting out.
They sell them the disease because they want to. I don't know what was.
So then, like, in order to get it back, they send the Yakuza. They said the and Dolph Lundgren as this like religious fanatic who also murders people. After Keanu Reeves and this other lady, who are trying to get it out of Keanu Reeves' brain because they're gonna like chop his head off if they find him. But also then they hook up with Ice-T to like broadcast it to everybody so the word gets out.
The only thing I would add to that is
The dolphin.
Well, okay, so there's the dolphin, but also the cure is like 300 gigabytes or something like that, which is over the capacity of Keanu's brain.
Oh yeah, his brain is constantly bursting at the seams.
Yeah, so he's like becoming ill because he's like overclocked his brains. Which I just love that it's some like stupidly silly like 300 megabyte or gigabytes or something like that, which is like, a hard drive.
And they eventually get this information out by hacking Keanu Reeves' brain with the help of a psychic dolphin who
may or may not be suffering from smack addiction.
That's true. And doesn't the dolphin like somehow kill Dolph Lundgren's character?
It like zaps
Dolphin Lundgren. That's dolphin on dolphin crime.
Wow.
Yeah. Thanks.
So yeah, I guess that's mostly what happens. It's a movie that I very much enjoyed watching. I was laughing pretty consistently throughout, though I will agree that the plot itself is boring. I did not enjoy following it as like a drama, but on kind of a minute by minute basis, I was newly amused by ridiculous lines and amazing depictions of cyberspace. It's really what was it that Roger Ebert called it? An amusing, one of the great goofy gestures of recent cinema. It's a very goofy
the turn of phrase.
movie. Yeah,
I miss that guy.
Yeah, I would say that in the weeks since I've watched this, pretty much all of the details, other than the dolphin, have just like oozed out of my brain in one way or another. But I've also heard that's kind of true about William Gibson in general. Like I've heard that Neuromancer is like an incredibly difficult book to read because it's just so indecipherable and boring.
I've read Burning Chrome, which is the short story collection that Johnny Mnemonic comes from, and I read it in high school, and I think mostly didn't understand it. But it is he really was a fan of Lemus Burroughs, and so there's like that kind of element going on where it's just like this wild like fire hose of like information and like bizarre stuff. And I mean, honestly, the heroin addiction may have come straight from Burroughs in that regard.
Do you remember anything about the story?
Yeah, I remembered a lot of it had passed me by. But I did remember the basic concept of him having the thing in his brain. And then I also remember these guys have like laser whips. In the short story, they're not laser whips. They're like whips that are one molecule wide. And so they're like extraordinarily sharp. And they just like cut through things like a knife through butter. Those are the two things I remember from the story. It was like a long time ago that I read it. So
I feel like I was just so aesthetically put off by this film that like that's what was so difficult for me and, very insulting to suffer through. Parts of it, pieces of it are interesting enough. I was surprised to learn that, I was just like so annoyed by this, and I hate to be so negative, but I guess I was under the impression that since it was William Gibson, so he wrote it, I'm not familiar with him at all, and then adapted the screenplay. And so wrote the screenplay. So I was having this sort of like these negative feelings about the script, thinking that this was just like a 1-to-1 adaptation with like no new interpretation or any like subtleties or nuances like drawn out from the source material and then reinterpreted visually. Everything just felt really clunky and poorly edited, and a lot of the like any sentimentality about it are like pretty difficult to find and pick up on. But the things that did work for me, I was interested in the idea of human couriers, as in that like information and data could be corruptible or picked up or stolen via the internet, given like the sprawling nature of it, how it's something like so out of control, that the safest way to send information is through human beings, so then like this human mind body merging of the machine, and then we see that reflected in the ghost in the machine, the pharmacon executive whose consciousness is then uploaded into some aspect of the internet. We didn't even mention that in like the synopsis, because this movie is just so, they use a phrase that we talk about in MLIS programs, information overload, when a person, a patron seeking information suddenly just gets inundated with a fire hose worth of information. They sort of shut down. And I guess that's kind of how I experienced the movie. I was just so overwhelmed by every aspect of it that I just closed off, and I decided not to really take anything else in. But just the aspect of couriers, mnemonic couriers themselves, I thought that was
that information overload thing also happens in Strange Days as well. That's used as like a method of murder. It's just like beaming too much information into somebody's brain, which is kind of a nice metaphor for how the internet has affected us in the present day.
This also gets at like and I think this, as well as the other movies we'll talk about, like it still has like a human like element connection to it. Like the bodies are connected to the web, are connected to computers, but it's like there's still this like hurdle in front of them, and so like you have to go through a person, whether you're killing them or whatever, in order to get to everything. There's still like this element, which I think as we get further into the series, becomes less and less of a reality, because a lot of the stuff, if we're looking at like in 2025, it becomes much more automated and through AI rather than like, the physical, Keanu Reeves character, the physical Ronnie Lee Miller character, like in the way of it, or participating in the action.
Well, and even when he interacts with the internet, it's like a full like VR thing which is like a William Gibson thing, like that the internet is this physical space that you traverse, which I think is like obviously very silly in retrospect, but it does kind of make sense if like there's so much about computing that is like just using like physical object metaphor for like whatever's going on, like files or like Windows. Yeah. So like it does make sense that it's like, well, if computing could, they would just make entire virtual spaces. And like there's been a few abortive attempts at that, like the metaverse or whatever, and none of it's really stuck, I think, because ultimately the internet has a different like material idiom than like real life does, and so it kind of doesn't work in like a physical space. One thing,
but it's like quaint, it's like kind of quaint. It's kind of nice. Like I was thinking while watching Hackers, I was like, when did we go away from the vision of like actual highways and shit in our internet? Like, like it's so kind of nice, and it does.
The dolphin has to swim around, and Keanu needs to raise, find the file. Yeah,
those are my favorite scenes, because it's just, again, to Michael's point, it's like there's like people. You could do it like Black Hat with Michael Mann, where it's just the wire kind of running through all the other wires and the other systems and stuff. That's not very visual outside. Like, this is what's actually happening. But in this, it's like you have to create like this VR conduit that like moves through the internet. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of early conceptions of the internet were kind of like that. I don't know if you guys ever read Ender's Game, but there's a similar conceit in Ender's Game where like you plug into like a mainframe and like you're interacting in like a virtual environment. But one thing I think that this movie and a lot of the other movies are kind of interesting about, and I don't actually know if this is like ends up being true of the internet. I think it does on a certain level, but maybe not in the way that they say, is so like in the opening title crawl of, I think it's this movie, right? Don't they talk about like, this is the beginning of the Info Wars or something like that?
Yes, it does. I forgot about that.
I had to do a Google search. I was like, did Alex Jones take his show's title from this movie, and I could not find that. However, it was founded in 1999, so I guess it's like not outside the realm of possibility. But anyway, like I do think that all of these movies on the internet that each of these movies presents, the things of value are pieces of information, right? Like, so in this movie, the MacGuffin is basically like the pharmaceutical, like, whatever, molecular formula, whatever the pharmaceutical.
It's the cure for cancer, basically.
Yeah, but it's like a piece of information, right? They can load it into his head. And then in a lot of the other movies that we're going to be talking about, like, what is at stake is information either being hidden or exposed.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like a really interesting view of the internet that I think in some ways is kind of prescient. And maybe in other ways doesn't exactly map, but like everything of value on the internet is a piece of information in these movies. And the value of the internet sociologically in these movies seems to be its ability to publicize information that otherwise might have been hidden. And sometimes that's the curse of the internet in the case of like maybe some of the hacker stuff or like Sandra Bullock's situation in the net. But I don't know. I just think it's interesting that like, you know, outside of the internet, like this movie could have been like a noir film in which like there's like a bag of money that Keanu has instead of like, you know, a file in his brain. But it is a file in his brain, and like that feels very particular to how the internet was conceived. It's like the information superhighway, the you know, this doesn't come up in these movies, but there's like this early idea on the internet that like information wants to be free. Like it's kind of like
I think like Hackers gets into that.
Yeah, like this information anarchy sort of sense that the internet ushers in, and I do think that that's interesting to have a noir film, more or less, like, or a noir plot. I don't know if this is actually a noir film, but like entirely based on.
I would call it a noir film.
Yeah, but
that's a good point, because then there's the whole question of like, with the Henry Rollins character Spider, how he's like, we have to get this out there, and so it was like the good of the many versus like the good of the one. How Johnny's like, well, it doesn't matter if I'm dead. And it's like, you'll be saving the entire world. This information needs to be put in the hands of everyone. And then there's that. It's not really like a throwaway line, but then the ghost in the machine is like, it's more profitable to give out the cure than it is to hide that information. You make more money curing people, or whatever she's
the other way around.
Oh wait,
no, they make more money not curing people.
No, I thought she said when the cure is more profitable.
I don't remember the script of Johnny Mnemonic.
It's mostly not just
But I'm glad you mentioned Henry Rollins, because that was the thing that I left out of my
God, I forgot he was in this.
I learned on Wikipedia that Henry Rollins is uninterested in science fiction generally, but he joined this movie because he liked the film's focus on an upcoming disadvantaged underclass. But do we have any other Johnny Mnemonic thoughts before we get into the net? It seems like we're kind of naturally transitioning into that.
I think this is a good time to transition to the net, because it is the one movie of all of these that positions the internet as horrific.
True. Yeah.
They knew everything about me. They must have watched on the internet.
My God.
Someone's tapped into the system.
I'm staring at the personal files of the Undersecretary of Defense. Think of the power that they have.
You can make it reality. Won't you choose?
They've screwed with my information and my fingerprints.
It's time to go.
I don't understand. Why me?
This summer, Sandra Bullock is caught in the net.
They've done it to me. They're going to do it to you.
Rated PG-13 at theaters July 28th.
Okay, let's talk about the net. This came out in July 25th, so 2 months after Johnny Mnemonic. Directed by Irwin Winkler. And I gotta be real, I had such a hard time finding information about this movie on the internet. It is very much not a classic, and it has not been documented very well. So most of my facts about this movie came from the IMDb trivia page about this movie, and so I apologize if they're not particularly enlightening. But here are the facts that I got. Firstly, The computer that Angela, Sandra Bullock's character, uses is a Power Mac 8100/80, which was introduced in 1994, the year the movie was shot. And the video game she's beta testing at the beginning of the movie is the 1992 shooter Wolfenstein 3D.
Okay, I thought that's what it was, and I was like, was this game not out in 1995? Like, okay, so they're just taking an old game and pretending like it's a new game.
Right. She's using a text-to-speech program in the chat room early in the film, and that is a technology that was invented in 1984, but was recently coming into popularity at the time of the film's release. The scenes at the computer convention were filmed at Macworld 1994. Is Macworld still a thing? I don't think so. Right?
It's all Macworld now.
We're all living in Macworld. This is my favorite bit of trivia. This movie is mentioned in the 1997 Seinfeld episode Serenity Now, which is cited by Frank Costanza as the reason why he used to sell computers out of his garage.
Probably the most important legacy of this movie.
I forgot that. Yeah, that is true. He does.
I got a classic cinema connection for you. The moment where the character Jack wraps his handkerchief around Angela's midriff is reference to Alfred Hitchcock's film Notorious, in which Cary Grant does the same thing to Ingrid Bergman. This movie inspired a 1998 TV series, which was canceled after only one season, as well as a 2006 sequel directed by Charles Winkler, the son of Irwin Winkler. And I just got one critic quote for you from Roger Ebert. In 1995, Roger Ebert said, "This stuff is so concocted, I had no business caring about it. But I did, because of Bullet." How does she do that? She's very low-key. She's so natural, she seems to be remembering a scene rather than playing it. She has a warm smile. She never overreacts. She creates the sensation that although a scene may seem absurd to us, it seems perfectly real to her, and we buy it. The computer stuff will interest anyone into such things.
God, Ebert was cooking in 95.
He really was. It seems like he's mostly having feelings about Sandra Bullock in that quote, which I gotta say, relatable. Sandra Bullock is beautiful in this movie. And I've never really had a thing for Sandra Bullock otherwise, but man, yeah. The Net. What do you guys think about this one?
Did we summarize it?
We have not.
Okay.
What is The Net about?
So The Net is about this woman who is extremely online in a way that I didn't think really existed in 1995. She calls herself a simp, for instance. But she's like, she seems to be basically like a shut-in, but who's somehow like hot Sandra Bullock. Her mother is having like dementia and is in a assisted living center, it seems like. And so she's kind of like caring for her mother while also like working from her computer, I believe.
Working remotely.
Like she's like living the 2025 like standard life in 1995. But basically her identity is stolen because she meets this dude on the internet and they like meet up and have a fling. It turns out this dude's evil.
Wait, no,
they didn't meet on the internet.
Sorry. They don't meet on the internet. Well, she doesn't realize that they met on the internet because he finds out her plans via her posts on the internet and then finds her and they have a fling. Unbeknownst to her, he has ill intentions.
And she doesn't know it's the guy that she knows from the
Correct.
chat room.
Yeah. And it's like a guy on the chat room.
The apartment. That's the. Keep going.
No. What's your question?
Yeah.
I don't think that she met him on the internet because that guy goes to the apartment that's the like chat Bob.
So he's not Cyberbob.
He's not Cyberbob.
I thought he was one of the other chatters at the
because he like quotes her.
I just figured it's just because he's watching her internet, not because he was literally in the chat room.
I think that in 1995 they probably didn't have a conceptualization of like somebody just being able to like watch what you're doing on your screen without being in a chat room with you, but I don't know.
Yeah, because he's not the okay. Anyways,
well, the long and short of it is he takes all her like passport and driver's license, like he takes all her stuff, and then basically uses the internet to start like erasing her as a person and changing her into this person called like, is it like Roxanne Marks or someone like
Rebecca Marks, maybe?
Marks is the last name.
Yeah.
But
Ruth Marks. Yeah.
Ruth Marks. And so like she ends up being identified as Ruth Marks by like all of the authorities and all that. Where meanwhile, like her real identity is being like used like kind of like as a sock puppet, basically.
Ruth Marks has a criminal record.
Yeah, they invent Ruth Marks' criminal record. She's like you know, a lady of the night and has been like arrested is like has all these warrants up for her arrest involved with like narcotics trades, like it's but obviously like Sandra Bullock is like, this isn't me, I didn't do this. And then they're like, well, let me see your papers. And she's like, I don't have any papers. And so it's like this like horrible like kind of Kafkaesque like you know, I'm innocent, but I can't prove that I'm innocent because everyone in the movie is like, well, the computer says, and they just go by what the computer says.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love when she goes to the front desk of the hotel that she's not yet checked out of, and they say, well, the computer says that you checked out yesterday. Well, the computer says everybody is using the computer as like the ultimate litmus test of what objective truth is.
Yeah, and then I'll be honest, there's like a little crime plot. I did not find that nearly as interesting as the they stole her identity plot.
I feel like the crime plot and they stole her identity plot are kind of one and the same, but
they're linked, but they are basically like they're using her like her identity as like to get into like this. They've programmed like a backdoor in all these security systems that like government agencies use. And so they're like, aren't they using her identity to like do like get into the security systems and then like do all sorts of mayhem? And so like as she's trying to get her identity back, she's also uncovering this like plot, which is basically like the Norton antivirus people are evil.
Yeah.
It
the company she works for is called Cathedral Software, which I thought was cool.
It sounds like a Peter Thiel company.
Yes. Yeah, I guess I would agree that, and especially because like the big bad here, the guy who's orchestrating this big criminal conspiracy, is someone that you almost never see on screen. But that also kind of goes along with the Kafkaesque vibes of this movie. I do find this movie to be conceptually horrifying
and realistic. Like, how many people have had identity issues on the internet? You know, like credit cards stolen, like or falsified information that spreads and like affects them in real life or that sort of thing. Like that. That's
like
all the time.
A thing that I see often is like on Instagram, there will be like a new social media profile created under one of my friends' names, but it's not them. It's like somebody pretending to be them. And like they have to go on their Instagram story and be like, hey, that's not me, report that account. But that's happened like, you know, at least 5 times in the, you know, like 3 years I've been on Instagram. I feel like identity stuff is just kind of runs rampant.
All right, fine. I'm Swaffy Music. That's my. I'm like your evil version of your music Instagram. I got
Swaffy Music.
Well, and I feel like there's entire like systems on the internet that exist to prove that you're the right person. And I mean, this has gotten muddier now, but like there used to be like, you know, I mean, there still are like verified celebrity accounts as opposed to just like, oh, I'm actually Sabrina Carpenter or, you know, that sort of thing. Like there's
at real Donald Trump.
You have to like when I was setting up the podcast my wife and I do to get onto Google Podcasts, we had to like do a video of ourselves to prove that we were real. And not like a bot or not someone pretending to be us. And stuff like that. I just feel like of all the movies we watched, and especially the movies today, this is the one that feels actually the most realistic about what the internet is on a like day-to-day basis. for real people,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and like right now, there's so much identification verification hoops that you got to jump through, and increasingly so. Right now, the UK is getting ready to pass a law that will require you to like upload your ID to use like basically anything on the internet, is my understanding.
Anything
And
that's 18 plus, there's like things that are with 18 plus.
yeah, and we've kind of seen that happen in America just this past year as well, where now you have to like take pictures of like your driver's license, your passport, in some cases like take pictures of your face to like use a porn site or something. And like on one level, it makes sense that you should have to verify your identity to use the internet because identity theft is so common. But on the other hand, once that information is just like available in cyberspace, then that information itself becomes subject to uh, breaches of cybersecurity. And who knows where your data is kind of floating around in the kind of the way that the big data marketing firms operate now.
Well, and like if it's like, oh, like this is like through like a governmental like guard system, like that's do you really want the United States government in this current time to be sifting through your personal information? Like,
yeah, I mean, not that they aren't already,
Yeah.
but you don't necessarily want to co-sign it.
Yeah, you don't want to.
It will give access points to other agencies. I mean, like obviously, like NSA, like the NSA, and like whatever, like keep logs on everything. But like, I'm unclear. Like, if your state ID is involved, does that give access to like Tennessee Highway Patrol and like things like that? Like it's unclear to me, like where the boundaries are, because like right now, it does seem like fairly cordoned off, like where like local law enforcement can't find your browsing history without like warrants and things like that.
Right.
However, I don't know what it means if I like verify my age to, I don't know, access something on the internet. Like I guess the other movies, like all the hacker movies that we've watched are, and we talked about this a second ago, but like they're all about how the information or the internet will disseminate information, and that is a net good because the elite gatekeepers and like kind of authoritarian systems that we have are hoarding information that it benefits from. Whereas this movie is like the internet will disseminate your information, which will have disastrous consequences for you. And I think that, like, I mean, what we're seeing right now in real life is that we're kind of in a very slow but undeniable process of like total epistemological collapse because of the range of information that's on the internet. Not just that there's so much information, but that there's no way to verify information and things like that. And I think that like that's one of the things that maybe is kind of naive about like a lot of the hacker ethos of we're just going to liberate information, man, is that like once all this information is just readily available and there's no sort of like institutional guardrails, whatever the limitations of those institutional guardrails, which I think that there's many, but once there's no institutional guardrails, like people seem to have lost the ability. I've lost the ability to like sort through all of it and verify all of it. And that can have like really disastrous consequences, I think.
Yeah, and one thing that I feel like this movie does really well is capture this more abstract horror of like, my information is out there, like how much information is out there, like how much do they know, how can this information be leveraged. It feels like there's no limit to what can be done with maliciously wielded information online from this like really shady criminal organization who's just decided to ruin this woman's life as a means to their own particular end.
Well, I think like what's interesting in both this and in Johnny Mnemonic is that like the villains are like these capitalist agents, like manipulating the internet for their own gain. And I think that, I mean, that's largely true of the internet now, except that that's just kind of the kind of ambient default of the internet is that the internet exists to enrich capital And anything else that we experience on the internet is kind of incidental to that, and you're lucky if you have a good experience on the internet, because it doesn't really matter as long as you're feeding the ad revenue monsters.
Right.
So I think both of these movies kind of tap into that, which is the power of like corporate interests on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other net thoughts while we're still on it?
I was pretty, like, all of it takes like a very horrific turn watching a woman's identity being erased. I was kind of joking when I talked about it on Letterboxd, like there's nothing worse than a woman losing her identity. Never forget who you are. But it was very upsetting. Her shut in and like solitary existence. I felt like I'm seeing it in Johnny Mnemonic, in The Net, and definitely in Hackers. I unfortunately didn't get to catch Strange Days, but there is this message of like strength in numbers, of like communal connectivity versus like the individual. Johnny, being so all about himself. Well, I want to live. I would like to live. These are my memories and I'm suffering. And then it's with the help of the low text that he's able, like a network of people, interconnectivity. And then Sandra Bullock and her shut-in lifestyle means that she doesn't know her neighbors. She's been living in this community for years, and there's only one ally, and it's her psychiatrist. And that only goes so far. If she just had, and then her mother's Alzheimer's, coming into play there, and then on into Hackers, how it's the group of the hackers versus like the solo brilliant Mr. the Plague, the many versus the single or the solo. And so I do like seeing that theme echoed throughout, of like interconnectivity and a network of people.
Right.
But the net, if we're doing like between the two of like a conspiracy mystery theory or thriller, The Net I think is the much stronger of the two.
I would agree.
With more emphasis on internet, like as it is existing, instead of like this speculative fiction of what the internet could be and what it might look like. It was just hard to like accept that as like the reality of the film, given that it's so not that. But The Net.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think I do like Johnny Mnemonic's like wildly fanciful version of the internet, because there are things in this movie that seem just very goofy to me, because it's like almost like what I'm used to the internet being. And some of it's just like the datedness. Like there's just like so many amazing like 1995 like website designs.
Yes.
But I think also some of it is like, I don't know, it's just silly, where it's like, it doesn't seem like it's quite got a handle on what the internet is. So there's a weird, like, almost like uncanniness to some of the stuff that just feels like, I don't know, like this doesn't feel like exactly like what the internet's supposed to be. And maybe that's just the 30 years difference that there's between this movie and that. But
yeah, I definitely wasn't old enough in 1995 to have a vivid enough memory of the internet to say how much of this is completely accurate and how much isn't.
I remember being born in 95, and then the rest of it's kind of a blur.
One thing that this is very accurate about this movie is the prevalence of floppy disks in 1995. I love all the floppy disks.
There's a scene late in the movie where Sandra Bullock's character is rifling through someone's desk at an office, and she's like, "Where are their floppies? Where are their floppies?" I remember that. Like people would have their little Rolodex looking things that were just floppy disks.
Right.
I miss those.
Agreed.
When we moved out of our newsroom in Savannah, I just remembered the amount, like the floppy disks, man. There was a gazillion of just like Parade 1997.
Man.
Event.
Did you guys have a floppy
2001
player to
no
those puppies up?
No, you'd have to go to the library.
I'm curious if they're even still, because those things get corrupted after a while.
Oh yeah.
After 3 days in the ocean water, beating against a wreck. Chance.
She like shipwrecks as she like comes to in this like hospital room.
Deus Ex Machina situation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we will leave it there. And we'll take a break. And then come back and talk about Hackers and Strange Days right after this.
You better figure out what's on that disc.
They've been framed for a crime they didn't commit.
Everybody who touches that thing gets busted.
Now, all they can count on is each other.
I got an idea.
Okay, let's nail him.
Never send a boy to do a woman's job.
You're not good enough to be boss.
Yeah, maybe I'm not.
But we are.
Hackers, rated PG-13, now playing at theaters everywhere.
And we are back with episode 2 of Cinematary's new series, Internet Movies. This is Windows 95, the episode where we are talking about 4 movies from 1995 about the internet and other related topics. Next movie on our list is, in my opinion, the best of the 4 movies we're talking about this week, and that is Hackers by Ian Softly.
Best soundtrack for sure.
Oh yeah, they started with Halcyon and On by Orbital, and they had
incredible
from
incredible.
Yeah. I found a lot of stuff about this movie online, so apologies if this fact sheet is a little on the long side, but let's get into it. This film was written by Raphael Marou, who was inspired by the hacker and cyberpunk subcultures. He saw the film as more than just about computer hacking, but about something much larger. He said that it was, in fact, to call hackers a counterculture, or he said, in fact, to call hackers a counterculture makes it sound like they're a transitory thing. I think they're the next step in human evolution.
There it is.
The movie's meant to reflect the ideals laid out in the 1986 essay, The Hacker Manifesto, which Michael read. So I'm curious to hear about that.
I did. It's pretty short.
The movie quotes the manifesto at one point, the quote being, "This is our world now, the world of the electron and the switch. We exist without skin color, without nationality, without religious bias, and you call us criminals. Yes, I am a criminal. My crime is that of curiosity."
God.
For research, Maru went to a meeting organized by the New York-based hacker magazine 2600, the Hacker Quarterly. There he met Fiber Optic. You'll have to look up how that's spelled because it's not spelled the way you're thinking.
I don't even take any of this, Fury. I'm so sorry.
Fiber Optic is actually a 22-year-old hacker by the name of Mark Abeen, who spent most of 1994 in prison on hacking charges. Maru also hung out with other young hackers being harassed by the government and began to figure out how it would translate to a film. He remembered, quote, "One guy was talking about how he'd done some really interesting stuff with a laptop and payphones, and that cracked it for me because it made it cinematic." The character Eugene Belford uses Babbage as a pseudonym at the end of the film, and that is a reference to Charles Babbage, who we talked about in the last episode. He's the 1833 inventor of the computing machine, which was designed for agricultural calculations. There's also a fictional computer mainframe in the movie called Gibson, homage to cyberpunk author William Gibson, we've been talking about. The cast spent 3 weeks getting to know each other and learning how to type and rollerblade. They don't know how to type. It's 1995. Nobody knows how to type yet.
They had typewriters, right?
If you're in a particular profession, I suppose. Also in this time, they studied computers, and now with the actual computer hackers, actor Johnny Lee Miller even attended a hackers convention. The film used no CGI for any of the sequences in cyberspace, which is mind-blowing to me. He said they used, quote, "more conventional methods of motion control, animation, models, and rotoscoping to create a real three-dimensional world, because computer graphics alone can sometimes lend a more flat, sterile image." Which is probably a good call for 1995 CGI. MGM/United Artists set up a website for hackers that soon afterwards was allegedly hacked by a group called the Internet Liberation Front. A photograph of the film stars Angelina Jolie and Johnny Lee Miller was doodled upon, and the words, "This is going to be an entertaining, fun promotional site for a movie," were replaced with, "This is going to be a lame, cheesy promotional site for a movie." The studio maintained the site during the theatrical run in its altered form, which makes me think it was not actually hacked.
Boy, they really got him with that change of words.
That's right. Lame cheesy.
Bling.
Shortly after the filming ended, Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie were married. They separated after a year and divorced in 1999. A couple critics' quotes for you. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars and wrote, "The movie is smart and entertaining, then as long as you don't take the computer stuff very seriously. I didn't. I took it approximately as seriously as the archaeology in Indiana Jones." Peter Stack of the San Francisco Chronicle wrote, "Want a believable plot or acting? Forget it. But if you just want knockout images, unabashed eye candy, and a riveting look at a complex world that seems both real and fake at the same time, Hackers is one of the most intriguing movies of the year." And then for the Chicago Reader, we have Jonathan Rosenbaum, who wrote, "Without being any sort of a miracle, this is an engaging and lively exploitation fantasy thriller about computer hackers, anarchistic in spirit, that succeeds at just about everything the net failed to." Shots fired. Yeah. Shots fired.
Do you think do you think the eye candy is Matthew Lillard? I know he's saying Angelina Jolie, but I think it's Matthew Lillard.
I mean, it's Matthew Lillard.
Jorge no los dos.
Yeah.
We can't deny Angelina Jolie in this movie, but Matthew Lillard is serving up some looks in this movie.
Angelina Jolie in her first major role too.
Oh, I didn't.
That's wild to me.
Yeah. Well, Grace, I know that you, like me, share a great affection for this movie. So, do you wanna explain what it's about?
Sure. Let's see. At the ripe old age of 11 years old, a young boy by the name Dade, screen handle Zero Cool, successfully hacks hundreds upon hundreds of computers across the nation and winds up before some sort of federal jury wherein he is prohibited and forbidden from ever having any access to a computer or any other sort of like electronic device until his 18th birthday. So he gets a little slap on the wrist for doing some light electronic domestic terrorism and is given until his 18th birthday to clean up his act. Well, in the meantime, he is obviously still learning everything he can about computers. It is now his 18th birthday. His parents are separated. Him and his mother are starting their new life in New York City, the most interconnected international city, I guess, in the States. He is attending high school. It's his senior year, and he's trying to fit in, wherein he comes across other like-minded hackers such as himself, as he's now finally able to enter the internet after so many years away. His first foray, he hacks into a local television station to put on The Outer Limits. Do not adjust your screen. That was so cool, I thought. And he engages in some fun swordsmanship, some fun sparring with another hacker by the handle of Acid Burn. As he goes on, he
Crash and burn, baby.
Crash and burn. He develops his friendship with his little network of hackers, going on to find that Acid Burn is in fact the girl, the object of his desires, Angelina Jolie. When one of their hacker friends, who's like a little lower on the totem pole, they don't really respect him, he's getting new into hacking, unwittingly hacks a garbage file from a very large corporation. And in this garbage file, he finds something. He doesn't really know what he finds, but that sets off some red flags in the company's security system, and their head of security, screen handle, it doesn't really matter. Belfort is his last name, but he's the Plague. Is
The
his
Plague.
Yeah, Mr. The Plague. You're gonna need to come out here. Hysterical. The Plague, the one-man security team for this large firm, who has been embezzling funds via a worm, not a virus, but a worm that kind of works its way through systems and escapes out. And he is doing this in cahoots with Lorraine Bracco. Lorraine Bracco's in this? Wow. And they're a fun little romantic couple who are taking funds out of this company, and they're going to abscond with it all. But in order, they need someone to take the fall. So the little hacker, they're going to frame him for releasing a fake virus that they made that will capsize like 15 oil tankers or something. Was it oil tankers or maybe just tankers? Yeah. They have some sort of a payload, and it's going to be some big environmental disaster. And they're going to blame it on hackers, thereby alienating hackers and singling them out as a demographic and setting precedent for all sorts of arrests and warrants into the hackverse. And so it's up to these plucky teenagers to uncover the conspiracy and expose the plague. Can they do it? There is a deadline. Hackers. See it in theaters, 1995. It's fantastic. The whole thing, I thought, start to finish. I loved it. I loved the so what is it, Andrew? What did you say that he saw hackers as the future?
Is that the evolution of the human race? Yeah,
evolution of the human race, and I think it's very important that it is a youth community that leads this foray into the digital space. They are young thinkers. They are rebellious, full of teenage angst and rage against the machine. But I so appreciate them having these like interdisciplinary studies that they go through. They're in AP English, so they're well read. They're very well versed on all the various,
I want to interrupt. The protagonist is not in AP English until he hacks his way into AP English to get to the Angelina Jolie.
Sure. And then tries out, a Ginsburg quote, but still there's something ticking under there, that isn't just computer. They've all read all these various like tech manuals, not just like the Hacker Manifesto, but they've read they're familiar with the engineering of it all. They know code words, phrases. There's a lot to do with how like God is like the most widely accessible password. That's like a fun play on like internet being like the new religion. Everyone pledges in tech we trust, not so much in God we trust. I think that's like a very interesting aspect throughout. But they're very like interesting, well-rounded, well-dressed. I love the look of these hackers.
God, yeah. That's like maybe the best thing about this movie for me is like just how like radical gender expression you see on display here. Like Matthew Lillard is in like braided pigtails for most of the movie and is often wearing like mesh tank tops and stuff like that.
But also like killer t-shirts. He has like a Dead Kennedy shirt and a Lou Reed shirt. Like,
he's a big music head. Like on the side, he's like hawking his own like mixtapes and stuff.
He's awesome,
right? Yeah. So it feels like it is presenting this like egalitarian, forward thinking vision of like hacker and internet subculture as like a place where things like gender and race don't matter anymore.
Yes.
Gender too, like Angelina Jolie is like just as respected a hacker as
she wears pants, but also I was thinking a lot about the names as well. I made myself laugh. I was thinking Ladybird, it's my name given to me from me. How they, assign the little boy that eventually gets brought in, they still call him Jeremy. I think that's his name, but he's like trying to figure out like a handle, acid burn. He's not Zero Cool anymore. He's Crash Override. The Plague, like these names that denote some aspect of their ability or their interests. So then they truly get to like name and create themselves. They exist outside of a gender binary of literal like zeros and ones.
Yeah.
The whole thing, like top to bottom, is really excellent and very cool. And every piece of it feels very well thought out. And I so appreciate the look. I was feeling very like snarky, how you said, great use of, no CGIs in 1995. I was thinking like poor Johnny Mnemonic, nobody got the memo. Like, but anyways.
This is going for a similar vibe as Johnny Mnemonic, But this is like if Johnny Mnemonic is Mario, this is Sonic the Hedgehog. Like there's just such a radical.
And then there's the game.
Cool, like we're like rollerblading in to this movie, right? There's also like the big arcade scene where he has to like beat Angelina Jolie's high score.
Well, there's a lot of there's much more gaming involved. There is a gamesmanship of Johnny Mnemonic, but it's but honestly, it's much more avant-garde in the VR internet world that you enter in, because it doesn't really there's no objectives. And in this one, in any sort of hacking feels like some sort. I mean, like you mentioned the arcade game. It's literally the movie kind of opens with him playing this PS2 game to beat Angelina Jolie's high score, and it's that's kind of the level of you don't there's a technical craft and stuff to the hacking that you mentioned, but you never really get too into the weeds on that. Really, it's exemplified through this kind of gamer mold, and that's how, whether it's the hacking group or Fisher Stevens as the magician bad guy.
He's so good in this movie.
He's amazing. He's incredible. He dresses like a magician and he's incredible.
His name is the Plague. I love it.
Yeah, but
but again, he's sitting sipping wine as he watches the finale of this movie. It's very funny.
But all of it's viewed through this lens of which I think the gamified quantity is something that you would is much more digestible today, because I think there's there's we try to digest a lot of stuff by gamifying it, and so it's interesting to watch that as this is how we not only break into top secret covert systems, but also that's just how you kind of maneuver around the world, is these you're really good at Sonic the Hedgehog or Mario, so that makes you a good hacker.
Yeah, there's this idea that those skills transfer to one another. That playing video games is actually just means you're smart.
I wish that was true.
Yeah, the games are also communal, and even the games that they play against each other for to prove their prowess as a hacker, they're doing that in a group, and then Mr. the Plague is doing VR by himself in his apartment. So I mean, there's again a sense of connectivity and communality that comes with being a hacker, being a gamer. And it's lame to game by yourself. I wouldn't really know. Can you guys?
I like playing by myself. I don't like doing the multiplayer
Max
stuff.
playing with himself.
Yeah, I do think competitive. I don't know. I think this movie has aged the worst out of all the movies for me personally.
Worst, not slash best.
Well, no. Here's what I mean by that is that there is the intention of this movie is to present this as kind of a group of radical inclusion, and they're at the vanguard of human progress and all that sort of stuff. And I really like that intention, but there's so much of this movie that is now deeply, deeply weighted down by what a lot of these signifiers have become as the internet. So for instance, the gaming element of it, gaming spaces online are some of the worst places on the internet. Especially competitive gaming and stuff like that. I don't necessarily mean tournaments, but I mean if you're playing Call of Duty or whatever and have your mic on, you're just sharing the worst, stuff known to man, and just really toxic stuff like that. And so that,
and it's not egalitarian.
It's not egalitarian. And so I see them competing with games, and that's my association, even though it's not really what is meaningful in the movie. What I see is the way that this culture kind of curdled into this you prove your worth by how good you are at something. That you're
the elite.
Yeah, the elite. And so I went back and read this hacker manifesto, and it's full of the stuff that it, when it was a truly marginal hobby to do this stuff, this is kind of charming, but it's full of stuff now that is very common talking points on the internet for internet fascist people, because it's we don't learn anything in school. They spoon feed us. The real smart people are the people on the internet who can think, past, whatever,
right.
And I don't know, the internet didn't have to become the way that it did. I really wish this kind of egalitarian spirit became the the main operating idea of the internet, and it does in spaces. There are places where you can find this sort of stuff, but a lot of the signifiers of hacking have kind of just become like the worst impulses of the internet, because they, once you drain out the egalitarian ethos, what you have is a very self-impressed group of people. And I think that like there is a real undercurrent, or maybe like just full on like overcurrent on the internet of like when like in groups have this like extraordinarily like hierarchical sense of like you belong with us because you're one of the best people. And even that like language of like they're the new stage of human evolution, like a lot of spaces in the 2000s became rife with like eugenics talk. And like there's a real thread on the internet of like certain types of people are the good people and other types of people have like genetic deficiencies and stuff like that. And like specifically all this language around smart people and all that. And that's not this movie's fault, I want to say that, but I just found it inescapable to like view this through the lens of hindsight of 30 years to say that like the egalitarian stuff is this weird bubble of what the internet maybe could have been, whereas a lot of this other stuff was what stuck around.
And I like this movie mostly as like this this utopian fantasy time capsule of like what we thought the internet could be in 1995. Obviously, it wasn't and isn't that, but it's still just like such a rad vibe.
It's because we don't have floppy disks anymore.
That's right. We got rid of the floppy disk.
We got rid of the floppy disk, and it had to change hands from person to person, which meant you had to get away from the fucking internet. And now
the cloud. I want nothing to do with the cloud.
I do think that this movie has the most interesting visual presentation of the internet, which is like deeply goofy. Like talk about a goofy gesture. It's deeply goofy, but it's really cool. The opening when he's flying into New York City and you see like the top down like New York City, and then it fades into like a motherboard. Like that is the
Koyan and Scotsy shit.
Amazing. Like that sort of idea of like the entire this being, the way that society is progressing is going to start progressing under the logic of the internet, I think is like a really visually interesting in this movie. I love that.
Yeah, and I just love the way that cyber spaces are depicted here. It's like this Tron-esque, like neon lit 3D models of mainframes and stuff, and also like the spaces in which they do the hacking is often like really visually stunning as well. Like the little office that the Plague does all of his computing in, like the whole room looks like you're in Tron cyberspace.
Kate's bedroom has a poster of Metropolis displayed above her bed, and it's like
you think about like the climactic scene when like they're dropping in the garbage file, and they're like just the way it's like illustrated where it kind of like has this like stacks and stacks of like books, like bookshelves, and they're only in this like one bookshelf and it's like filtering through all the data, but there's the blue one that says garbage. That's the one that they got to grab. There, just the kind of layout of that. It's awesome. But no, I also hear what you're saying, Michael, because it's something we kind of touched on a little bit in the last episode, where like all of these visions of the internet kind of are these like hopeful futures, and like hindsight's 2020, but like as sitting in 2025, it's like no, like where did blogging go? Where did social media go? Where did this automated help go? Like in desk set, you just kind of have the reality of the utopic visions of everything really didn't pan out.
And I think it grates on me in this movie because it's so like self-congratulatory. Like I think that ultimately makes it feel a little bit like harder to, I don't know, like it makes it harder to just be like charmingly retrospective for me, because it feels like this we have arrived at the next stage of human evolution, and it's us, and it's the people who look like us,
The movie's not self-important though. It's silly. It's such a silly tone to the whole.
It is. The movie is silly. The characters are not. The characters are silly, but like, I don't know. They do quote stuff from my crime was curiosity and stuff like that, like from the Hacker Manifesto, and it's just like deeply. I don't know. I don't really hold it against this movie, but I do find it like really. It's holding me at arm's length for sure.
I guess that didn't really do much. I kind of just, it was just kind of like young people just yapping, like it never, like I didn't really take it very seriously. I was like, it's just kind of got people running their mouths.
I mean, there's so much to this movie that's so fun. But when I'm thinking about it as like an internet movie, it's the kind of part that gets sour for me.
Sure. There's a Letterboxd review that I like that is just like, we got the wrong internet.
Really. I think the net is really the only version of the internet that really got it right.
That's
that
what
we used for.
Yeah,
we got the net.
Nothing but net.
Nice. Can we got the wrong internet be like a subhead to our series?
There we go. I like that. Any last minute hackers thoughts before we go to our last movie?
I love that he went from being like an 8-year-old boy to a 25-year-old Johnny Lee Miller in 7 years.
And immediately just like hacks some TV station to put on his favorite show.
Yeah. That's
what a life without the internet will do to you.
That's right.
I feel like I could do that. I can hack to find a TV show or movie I want to watch,
I do like at the end when the Matthew Lillard like is on TV as well. He's like in Times Square or whatever, like on the board, and he's like, "What's up, everybody? There's really incredible shit going on."
Yeah, they're doing some V for Vendetta shit, but they look like them. Yeah.
What is the TV program? It's Razor and Blade.
Oh yeah. What's the other show though? Hack the Planet. Producers had the planet.
Oh, and that becomes like this like rallying like protest, like Hack the Planet as they're being like pulled into the police car.
Speaking of another bit of Johnny Mnemonic trivia was that Sony put out a T-shirt for Johnny Mnemonic that said "Hack your own brain."
Dude, I want that T-shirt.
I looked it up. I looked it up on eBay. I was thinking about buying it, and I saw one on eBay. It was like $2,000. I think other people want it too.
Have you ever jacked in? Have you ever wire tripped? No? A virgin brain. Well, we're gonna start you off right. This isn't like TV, only better. This is life. Yeah, it's a piece of somebody's life. Pure and uncut. Straight from the cerebral cortex. You're there. You're doing it, seeing it, hearing it. You're feeling it. It's about the stuff that you can't have, right? Like running into a liquor store with a .357 Magnum in your hand, feeling the adrenaline pumping through your veins. I can make it happen. I can get you anything you want. You just have to talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. I am your priest. I'm your shrink. I'm your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man. The Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it. You even think it. You have it. Are we beginning to see the possibilities here? You know you want it.
But let's go ahead and get into our last movie, Strange Days by Catherine Bigelow. This one came out in October 13th, 1995. And originally it was written by James Cameron, who later went on to marry and then divorced Catherine Bigelow between starting Strange Days and this movie coming out.
Man, what an arc.
And he had Catherine Bigelow in mind to direct the movie. He wrote a 90-page treatment at first, and in his words, that 90-page treatment was practically a novel, but unwieldy. It needed structure. And then that treatment was presented to the screenwriter Jay Cox, who turned it into a script.
Which was also unwieldy and all over the place.
Absolutely.
That 90-page treatment must have been. This is the streamlined way.
Oh man. Some historical things that intersect with this movie that are worth noting. Bigelow's work on Strange Days was influenced by the 1992 LA riots that followed the acquittal of the cops that murdered Rodney King. She noted, I was involved in the downtown cleanup, and I was very moved by that experience. You got a palpable sense of the anger and frustration and economic disparity in which we live. She also has since said that the O.J. murder trial of 1994 echoed the film's events and noted that Strange Days was filmed during the summer and fall of that year. Angela Bassett was attached to the film from its very early stages after Bigelow sent her the treatment document, and she accepted the role. Ray Fiennes' breakthrough role in Schindler's List impressed Bigelow enough to cast him as Lenny. Cameron initially felt that a glibber and slicker actor would be much better for the role, his words, but admitted that Fiennes made Lenny a sexier character, a guy you can care about very much.
I don't know about that, but he is sexier.
Originally,
what was that term that people were like doing, like Ratman or Rat Boy? He's got that vibe to him.
Dear Rat
it was
Boy.
Ratmen. There was an article about Ratmen. That was yeah. The guy who essentially is cucking Ray Fiennes in this movie, Faith's love interest, was originally going to be played by Bono.
Damn. What a
I wish it was
horror world.
Hey, we still get a great Tom Sizemore performance.
That's true. He looks like he just stepped out of Mrs. Spinal Tap.
He looks amazing. I love Tom Sizemore in that movie.
To film the scene where the crowd celebrates the turn of the new millennium, the filmmakers also hired rave promoters Moss Jacobs and Philip Blaine to promote performances featuring Aphex Twin, D-Light, as well as, quote, all the cyber techno bands they could garner. $750,000 was spent on the event, which started at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night and ended shortly before its scheduled end at 4 a.m., as 5 people were hospitalized for suffering overdoses of ecstasy.
That seems on brand.
The opening sequence, which features a 16-foot jump between 2 buildings by a stunt performer without a safety harness, apparently took 2 years to coordinate. Wild to think about. The film's squid scenes, which are, like the virtual reality helmets they use, they offer a point of view shot, and they required multifaceted cameras and considerable technical preparation. A full year was spent building a specialized camera that could reproduce the effect of looking through someone else's eyes. The squid technology has been compared to the SimStim technology in William Gibson's Neuromancer. Once again, sorry.
Actually, William Gibson Award.
That's right
there.
Right. Yeah. No, that's actually my alarm to tell me to take out the recycling for tomorrow. Anyway,
hacking your brain right there, man.
Hacking my own brain. Yeah. Some critic quotes for you. Michael Mirasol argued that if Strange Days had been directed by a man, its rape scenes would have likely been criticized as sexist and misogynistic. Bigelow responded to this and insisted that the film does not glorify violence and that it has a positive purpose. According to her, quote, I wanted to treat the system fairly, such a Catherine Bigelow quote, because if it's the enemy, then we're the enemy, since by not changing it, we're reproducing it. The film ends in a strong insistence on hope. Ultimately, it's humanity, not technology, that takes us into the next century and the next millennium. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone called Strange Days Bigelow's magnum opus and credited Bassett's standout performance, describing her as fierce, funny, and heartrending.
Peter Travers is a hack.
He's right about Bassett, though.
He is right.
Yeah. Roger Ebert gave the film 4 out of 4 stars, describing it as a technical tour de force, and highlighted the film's astute use of squid technology, stating, quote, Bigelow is able to exploit the idea of what is happening. She forces her audience to deal with the screen reality instead of allowing us to process it as routine action. So yeah, Strange Days. I guess I'll give the plot synopsis of this. Ray Fiennes plays a guy he sells illegal videos, specifically like virtual reality point of view videos that
specifically like porn.
It's mostly porn,
but also just like thrilling scenarios, right? Like rob a bank or something at one point. And...
The opening sequence is a heist sequence, and it ends with a guy. It's like the beginning of Vertigo, right? A guy is like jumping from rooftop to rooftop and ends up slipping and dying. And so it's technically a snuff film.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I said no snuff films.
Exactly. But most of the illegal videos that people want to buy and sell are porn, of course. And he comes across a video of a woman being raped. It is a woman that he knows, I believe.
Yeah.
And he wants to track down the rapist, and it kind of ends up spinning out into a larger crime subplot that also intersects with the issue of police brutality, because he also gets a video of the police killing a prominent rapper / political figure, who seems to be starting up this like revolutionary movement. And so there's a lot of different moving parts in this movie. A lot of it has to do with Ray Fiennes kind of like going from one job to the next and trying to sell people various videos, and then trying to track down, who this criminal who's sending him videos is. And then, there's all the police brutality stuff, and also his strained relationship with Angela Bassett, who is his ex. And he really wants to get back with his other ex, this character Faith.
I don't think he's ever dated Angela Bassett. She's
that's a new thing.
I thought that she was.
I mean, he should date her. She's fucking gorgeous in this movie.
I think we've all been feeling that way. We might as well.
Like honestly, this is like top 10 to me, like most beautiful a person has looked in a movie is Angela Bassett in the course of this movie.
The rape, like whipping him around as like,
oh my god,
instruments in a fight too. Like,
yeah, I would do whatever she wants.
This movie is very long. It is, let's see, 145 minutes, and it really feels like you're getting two feature films back to back. But I can also understand people saying that it's Catherine Bigelow's magnum opus. Like, it really is like a big statement movie, and there's so much incredibly impressive camera work. Like those POV sequences are one shot, and there's so much like really athletic maneuvering of the camera around these really chaotic environments.
Cameras with film too. Like, this is like someone's got this like enormous like, I'm imagining like apparatus on them.
Yeah. So as my plot synopsis suggests, this is not really a movie about the internet per se, but it is about the proliferation of video, which of course is now a thing that happens on the internet. And it does feel kind of prescient with regards to video of, well, there's like pornographic video and video of real people that they don't want being out. But there's also video of police brutality being circulated, and kind of sparking resistance to police oppression, which at the time was distributed on television with Rodney King, but in the present day, the internet really feels like the place where that lives, and people having access to cameras in their phone, in their pockets all the time, and being able to upload those videos to the internet with ease has really changed the dynamic in some ways, and not changed the dynamic in others, because we've not seen a lot of institutional change, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a direct line between Rodney King and George Floyd.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's this weird like transitional element to the tech in the movie where like the idea that like you can just have a camera that you carry around like in your pocket, or I guess it's in your head or whatever, feels very like, smartphone world. But then the idea that that is then put onto a mini disc that then has to be physically taken to other places feels very much like the VHS, like, camcorder world.
Oh, and I also didn't mention that this movie most of it takes place on New Year's Eve, 1999.
It's the new millennium, baby.
So the future, when this movie is being made, and of course there were all sorts of technological anxieties about what's going to happen when we move into the year 2000. Are all the computer systems going to break? And are all of our, networks and energy grids gonna be powered down? And
it also takes place in the current conservative fantasy of what a city's like.
Absolutely. Like you drive through a city and it is just like stuff on fire and police beating people.
Like does Trump think that DC's violent, or did he just watch Strange Days?
But like in Strange Days, it's a police state, right? That's the reason why the city looks burned out. It's like the Rodney King like police suppression like just escalated rather than kind of plateauing. And so by the end of the 90s, you have like this authoritarian state that's like the LAPD like running the city and like just brutalizing its citizens. So if Donald Trump watched the movie, he got the wrong idea.
But this movie does have one of the ways in which it is kind of aged poorly is I feel like it has a very naive ending, where there's just like this mass uprising of all these people just kind of like swarm a small number of cops at this New Year's Eve celebration, and then all of a sudden we kind of wipe our hands clean of police brutality and oppression, and a new day has dawned.
Because the chief finds the video footage, he's like, oh, I guess we should change this. That's like the funniest part of it too. Like the change comes not just from the system, but specifically from the cops, which is wild.
Yes, the head of the cops goes up to the cop who has killed this rapper character and says, like, you're under arrest.
Don't do that.
I guess Derek Chauvin did face legal consequences in a way that the murders of Rodney King did not, but it doesn't feel like one police officer getting locked up really changes the equation all that much.
I do want to say two things. One, Rodney King survived the brutality.
I'm sorry.
He lived until like the 2010s. But I do think though that I'm mentioning that because like he was involved with kind of like ongoing like police reform stuff, and I do think that specific aspect of the movie of like if we disseminate video of like police brutality, the system will correct itself. I do think that for a lot of people has only become dated since 2020, because I think like throughout the 2010s, all like the kind of BLMs like swell, a lot of that, at least in liberal spaces, obviously there was like a left-wing contingent of that, but at least within liberal spaces was basically premised on that. Like if we expose the brutality of the police, then we can get the system to reform.
Right.
And I think now that dream is dead. And it was always dead. For instance, like Rodney King, they caught those dudes on video beating Rodney King. It was on national TV and they still were acquitted. Like, at the time it was already naive, but I think that there was this liberal dream of like, what if everyone could see it? So like you get like the body cameras and all those sorts of reforms. And now I think it's fairly commonplace for people to just say like, yeah, the system won't reform itself. But I do think weirdly, like that's only the idea of being cynical about that has only become mainstream fairly recently, since like a lot of the BLM stuff was kind of premised on the same thing.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
So yeah, other thoughts about Strange Days? It is an impressive movie in a lot of ways.
I really like this movie. This is not the best internet movie we watched, but this is like the movie I would probably flip on again most quickly. Just because like Catherine Bigelow is like unparalleled. Like I think like she's problematic fave, but she is like man, could she direct the hell out of a movie,
Absolutely.
Giving us a movie like this before she became a CIA psyop, like no, I'm kind of with you, Michael. Like, I think I've thought about this. I saw this a while back, and I thought about it a lot since. And it's not, yeah, I don't know if it 100% fits the internet movie definition, but I do think it's a good. I'm glad, Andrew, you put it at the end. Just it worked out that way because it does feel like a natural extension to like the areas that the internet like is going. Like, it seems like between not only just the VR aspect, but just the, like we talked about, like the camera, camera capturing all of this action and like the dissemination of people's lives and things like that through this kind of black market system. You also have the like Michael what's the actor's last name? Michael Wincott, who's fantastic as a villain. Has just like that incredible voice. Like just as this as this dealer of smut and of violence and of just promiscuity, I think it just feels very prescient in like those like technical aspects to today compared to, I agree, like the ending is very like happy clouds, like like something that Cory Booker and Pete Mayor Pete and stuff dream up every day.
Yeah,
but like it's not a reality. But I think that there's a lot of like pieces in it that speak to like the direction we're headed in this series.
Yeah, the movie like until the very end, until the turn at the very, very end, the movie feels so apocalyptic. It really feels like it's capturing the chaos, and just I don't know, the instability of the technological world that we live in now. But maybe it's like is a studio mandated like happy ending, or maybe that's just how Catherine Bigelow really sees the situation. But I don't know.
James Cameron having written it throws a wrench into it because James Cameron kind of is a more radical guy than Bigelow, but in terms of politics, but like based on the rest of Catherine Bigelow's career, I feel like that this was not studio intervention.
Right.
I do think, Andrew, when you have on your syllabus for the series, you wrote your little treatise on this episode, and you talked about like the presence of radical politics and hacking, and like
I ended up taking it off when we cut The Matrix, but there's a little bit of that in here.
But no, I do think that like in all these movies that maybe The Net, there is this kind of like, I don't know, in the 90s is kind of defined by like the end of history, like end of the Cold War sort of thing. And I think that like there was this kind of like latent revolutionary energy that at one point maybe it would have been funneled into communism or whatever, in a world where the Soviet Union existed. But I do think that what these movies and some of the like Greg Araki movies from the same like period, like maybe capture some of this too, is there's still this latent feeling that like there will be a revolution, right? And these movies kind of transplant that onto the internet, which I think like for a while did have these genuinely revolutionary, I don't know how sincere all of it was, but it was definitely like a aura surrounding the internet. A lot of the early like internet people like came out of like California, like New Left, like spaces and stuff like that.
And it did revolutionize the way that we see and experience the world. Absolutely.
Yeah, it just ended up being not like a, like an egalitarian, like left-wing revolution, like a lot of like the kind of self, mythologizing of this era is. And I think that that's ultimately like really sad. But like there is something like really very 90s about this feeling of like organization will like rise up like out of the people and they will be liberated by the technology. Like I think that that's like a very like 90s America inflected version of a revolution that I think is sad to think back on, but I don't know, is interesting to think back on as well.
Yeah, I feel like the 90s now has a reputation of being a very optimistic decade. And looking back at these movies from 1995, you can definitely see that, even as they're kind of capturing a lot of the darkness that we saw percolating at the time.
Yeah, I think what's Pollyanna about these movies is that they didn't really realize that the architecture of the internet was changing in the 90s such that it made this sort of like revolutionary spirit of the internet like doomed, like the Telecommunications Act and like things like that were like putting into place these silos for information to go through that were increasingly controlled by like corporations. And like these movies talk about corporations and like, they're evil, but the hackers always use the internet to subvert the corporations. Whereas in real life, like the corporations shape the internet in their own image. And now that's the only way that people interact on the internet is through like these corporate entities.
Right.
And that was the real kind of revolutionary shift. It was the like revolution of like corporate control of the internet, which is...
Yeah. Because like in the earliest days, the internet was run by the military, right? And now it is, yeah, true. These like research universities. But now it is very much owned by corporations. Even if you're not thinking about the big social media platforms that monopolize so much of people's time on the internet. The vast majority of websites are hosted by Amazon Web Services, right? Like even if you're never using Amazon, if you never buy anything on Amazon, you are clicking through Amazon servers all the time online, like, right?
Yeah. Well, and like once the internet moved away from Usenets into like consumer stuff, it was always through corporations. Like AOL for a while, it was like a garden internet where like AOL had their sites that you accessed through their platform and stuff. And I think that like the hacker culture grew out of like the Usenet stuff, and so there was a sort of like they viewed the corporate control of the internet as kind of like the normie aberration that like clearly was not the true spirit of the internet. And I think that like resulted in kind of like being blindsided by the way that that ended up being the actual architecture of the new internet.
Yeah, bring back Web 1.0.
Absolutely.
Well, do we have any closing thoughts about Strange Days or just these movies in general, folks?
Grace?
Strange Days sounds like a horror movie, and I'll have to watch it.
It's rough.
There are parts that are
very upsetting.
There's like, how in like Friday the 13th and like Halloween, you see from like the killer's perspective, like there's like scenes like that, except it's like rapes and stuff. It's really kind of awful.
And you see it kind of like to its fullest extent, right? It's there's no discrete cutaway. It is really uncomfortable to watch, I think.
But Angela Bassett is radiant in it. Gorgeous.
All right, well, let's briefly mention what we're doing next in internet movies. I'm really excited about this next episode. Where we're scaling back a little bit on the number of movies because I wanted to do just a quick little double feature of movies that pair together incredibly well. Those movies being Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa and Perfect Blue by Satoshi Kon. And we're going to call that episode A Vision of Horror. Here's the little description I wrote of it in our little syllabus for the series. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Japanese filmmakers saw the horrors of the internet first, namely Kiyoshi Kurosawa and Satoshi Kon. The latter understood the internet perhaps more deeply than any filmmaker of his time, and it's a pity he didn't live to help us understand it for much longer. Next week, Pulse and Perfect Blue. Great movies, very scary. Tune in. Do we have patrons to thank? I should have pulled up the list of patrons.
Yeah, let's we can do it.
Me, number one.
Number one.
Are you still a patron?
No, I think I asked for my $1 back. I'm not a patron anymore.
Good.
Wow. Well, you're in here right now.
Yay.
So thank you to our patrons. Cam, Grace Winburn, Ron Hayes, Am Shapiro, Tanner Huskins, Teresa Marsati, and Tyler Chandler. We appreciate your patronage.
And if you're not a patron, go to patreon.com/cinematary. If you subscribe at what is it, $5 a month?
Do $1 too. I mean,
$1.
Do $1. Do $5.
Yeah, do $5. Come on. But if you subscribe at either $1 or $5 a month, you also get our monthly Movies We Saw This Month series. If you're missing the old Cinematary, that's how you get it on Patreon. So, thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you next week.